Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's episode number 83 of the Audible Farm Podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. Couchtown Coffee is roasted right here in Iowa. The batches are made exactly for you as you want them, to your specifications. They're not roasting huge batches of coffee and then sending them out to all these stores to let them sit on the shelves, and maybe you'll buy one some months down the road and it's all maybe stale. No, this is roasted for you exactly as you wanted. So go to couchtowncoffee.com, find a coffee you want, and make an order today. Support local, and tell you what, since Couchtown is so awesome and they like live music and entertainment, and they believe in the podcast that I'm going here, and just because they love you, all the people that support them and me, they're going to offer you 20% off. 20% off. You have to enter the promo code IMPACT when you make an order. So when you make an order, let them know Audible Farm sent you. Say, hey, I listened to the Audible Farm podcast. Promo code is IMPACT. Do I get 20% off? And they'll say, yes, you do. And that's how that works. Thanks, Couchtown. We love you. Use the promo code IMPACT. Why is the promo code IMPACT this week? I am sitting down talking with Travis Shillington, TS Aggressor, as some might know him. But Travis Shillington is a professional wrestler. He does not wrestle as much as he used to, but he still wrestles. And he's a trainer. He's not the head trainer at IPW, but he's still trained. I mean, we go through all of this in the podcast. It was tons of fun. When I used to go to IPW shows all the time, Travis was always there. He would wrestle occasionally. He was usually one of the guys kind of getting involved. If the wrestlers were having too big of a beef, he would jump in the middle and separate them. It was always tons of fun to see him there. Every now and then one guy would start poking their finger in Travis's chest, and he would wrestle the guy. He would actually come back and wrestle the guy, after not wrestling for a while. And it was really awesome to see him mix it up with some of the younger guys and some of the people that, maybe he trained and things like that. So it's tons of fun. I'm glad I got to sit down and talk with him. And it's really cool that Travis's episode and Troy's episode are going to be back to back around WrestleMania weekend, which was a crazy WrestleMania weekend this weekend. If anybody is into the pro wrestling scene, I've got two awesome episodes here to bookend the weekend for you. So there was one came out last weekend, one came out last week, and the other one came out this week. So I hope you guys enjoy these. I spent a lot of time in the pro wrestling scene around Iowa, a lot of time at IPW hanging out with the likes of all the wrestlers there, and Troy and Travis and everybody else that was involved. I always have a great time going to their shows. They're always very fun, very entertaining. Everybody's very friendly. And as you can see in this, a lot of that comes from the top down. People like Travis and Troy, who are running the show there, being good people and doing the best they can. And, it's really cool because you can get both of their sides to the story one week right after the next. So check that out. Hey, guys, I really appreciate you guys listening. This is episode number 83 with Travis Shillington.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, so today I am sitting down with Travis Shillington. Actually, you know what? I can redo this, but did you want me to out you as Travis Shillington, or do you want to be...
Oh, that's fine.
All right. Yeah, okay. That's a weird kayfabe thing, because it's, it's tough to gauge how that one wants to go, because I've talked to about interviewing some other wrestlers, and they want to use their wrestler name just on the off chance somebody listens to it and associates them with the character they played, and I totally get that. But anyways, this is Travis Shillington, TS Aggressor, as some might know him around the Midwest and beyond. You, I first saw you wrestle at the Vault in IPW in Algona. That's where I first met you, and when I first started going to shows was kind of after you quit wrestling as frequently as you used to. So when I first saw you wrestle, you were one of those like legendary guys in the area, It's as a wrestling
aging,
fan.
Yes, maturing. Yeah, definitely sliding out slowly. That's kind of how my matriculation through the ranks went. Yeah, definitely the frequency of appearances really started to slow.
Well, I mean, it's one of those cool things, though. Like, as a wrestling fan, when you know that somebody's been around the area, and it's like, well, you should have seen this guy. He was, kicking everyone's ass 5 years ago, and now he does more of like a management role, and you get to see him wrestle every now and then. Like, that was one of the cool things where, because you were a wrestler and still wrestled, watching you scrap with some of the guys in the ring, when they were trying to fight each other, and you were like, hey, back up. It put some validity into what was going on in the ring, because it wasn't just, like, not to make fun of Troy, but it wasn't just Troy out there holding people apart. It was, you were actually a wrestler yourself, so you actually.
Oh yeah. I certainly had just a lot of fun every time you get in front of a crowd and you get fired up like that, and you're able to wrestling's, a one of a kind experience being on that side of it. But, whenever you're out there in front of the crowd, I think there's a certain level of showmanship to it. And just, it's very enjoyable.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. How like, when did you first start getting into wrestling? Did you have somebody show it to you, or was it like, Hulk Hogan and Andre, or did you have like a thing that drug you into it when you were younger, or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just cable television. I think like a lot of young guys, when I was young, and now I'm 47, so this goes way back. So there weren't that many cable stations. I mean, it was just a handful of stations. So having pro wrestling on one of them was a huge coverage of the market, right? Very accessible then.
Yeah.
So, so we watched quite a bit of wrestling when I was young, and getting into the old AWA that was on ESPN and Georgia Championship. That's something I really enjoyed. Guys like Tommy Rich and Junkyard Dog and Ted DiBiase. At times there was a lot of guys there, but and of course WWE or WWF at the time with Hogan was kind of the breakthrough guy in 84, I believe, when he came from the AWA, and the Rocky movie came out, and everybody's, including me, was fired up. So it captivated me at a pretty early age. Yeah. But, and I don't know. I think a lot of guys, there's fans, and then there's people like myself and a lot of guys that just never grow out of the fandom, just certainly enjoyed it as a fan and loved watching it, but thought, man, it'd be great to get in there at some point too, and be what it's like, feel what it's like, rather, to have people yelling for you, or feel the rush of being out there cutting loose in front of a crowd, and that's something that drew me to it as I was getting older.
Dude, yeah, I mean, as lame as it sounds, when Hulk got into his like later years and he was still going out there getting hulked up, like, that had to be the greatest feeling ever, where it's just like every punch was just making him madder, and the crowd was going nuts, and they're like, they knew what was coming, and just to have that ability, that would be very alluring, definitely. Another go for it.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, I was thinking, like, another thing you mentioned was kind of how everything was territorial, and that's something that a lot of newer wrestling fans don't understand, and that was kind of one of the cooler things that when I got into wrestling, I started realizing was like, well, a lot of these guys in WWF actually came from different little areas, and that's kind of how indie wrestling still is to an extent. You got guys that wrestle in certain areas. But, I mean, back then they had some bigger companies, like AWA was out of the Minnesota-ish area based, correct?
Absolutely. Out of Minneapolis with Vern Gagne is really where it took its roots.
Yeah. And that, that's super cool to have that, like, right in our back door. It's right up the street pretty much from us.
Right. And that's a big part of my story early on, and as I was a very, and a lot of guys go through this too. You go through high school, and I graduated. I graduated high school, and I just turned 18, and I was very undersized. I started lifting weights when probably the summer of my freshman year, but still very undersized, probably around 160 pounds graduating. And never really thought there was any chance of being big enough, because back then everybody was huge, and I thought the barrier of entry was going to be predicated on size, and I just was very small. So, even a few years out of high school, working out pretty hard, and I would take a lot of weight gainer and things, try to bulk up. It sounds funny to say that now, because now it's the exact opposite. But
yeah, that's so crazy to think about that. Like, back in the day, you had to be barrel chested. You had to be able to bench 400 pounds. I mean, it was you just start. It didn't really matter how tall you were, just how big you were really was like the biggest thing back then, you know? And,
I think so much of it was rooted in trying to look legitimate. You know, if guys tried to fight you at a bar or something, you know, after the show, you had to be scary enough that they wouldn't mess with you, I guess, or tough enough to handle them, you know. But you know, I guess so my story really is I just kept working out and things like that until I got up to about 230 pounds. I was about 24 years old, and I always kind of had that in my head. You know, I'd really love to give this a shot. If I can get to about 230, I thought at that weight, I would be just big enough to be one of the little high flyers, you know, be like the Dynamite Kid or Bret Hart or Kurt Hennig or Shawn Michaels, one of those faster pace guys, which of course I say that in no way was me at 230 was I ever even sniffed the league of those guys and their athleticism, you know, but I was in my head. That was kind of the measuring stick. I had to get to that weight. And I just happened to, and back then in 96, the barrier of entry was also, you know, there was no internet, so to speak. It was just starting, you know, and it was very tough to get into the business of wrestling. But also, it wasn't like, you know, 10 to 15 years before that where it was impossible without knowing somebody. You know, it was just starting in the later 90s to open up. You know, so I got in very quickly with a regional promoter introduced me to Brad Rangens. And Brad, if you don't know who that is, he was a 2-time Pan American gold medalist. I mean, he's a fantastic Greco-Roman Olympic wrestler. So, you know, if you can imagine my fandom, I mean, Kurt Hennig was a huge influence on me. He was one of my favorites, you know, as a high school kid and stuff. And one of the first people I met in wrestling, we pulled up to Brad's garage. He's got this really nice garage connected to his house that has the ring and wrestling mats all over and weights and a bathroom. It's a pretty nice, it's a blue collar setup, but it's a very nice blue collar setup. But so anyway, the first guy comes trotting down the stairs is Kurt Hennig.
Oh,
you know,
cool.
He's the first guy we see, you know, at about 260 pounds, super tan, you know, wearing his Ica Pro shirt and his Zubas, you know. I mean, he was dressed like, you know, exactly like you'd imagine guys from the 80s would be dressed, but it was 96, you know. And
dude, you mentioned Ico Pro. That's hilarious. Like that's one for the wrestling fans out there. Like, oh god, yeah. Anyways, yeah, let's keep going. Kurt Hennig comes down. So Kurt Hennig comes down, and me and one of my best friends, you know, took the trip with me, and cool.
We go on and we work out. We meet Wayne the Train Bloom, who I had seen many times on AWA television as one of the Destruction Crew, you know. And I always thought, man, that guy, he was a great heel. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, man, he had to be a huge prick in real life, you know. And it's funny because he was very blunt with things. Some people would say he had some prickish elements to his personality, but I really grew to really like him a lot, you know. And but I guess to go to all my story here, so it was Brad, Wayne Bloom, and Kurt Hennig, and me and my buddy. They let us beat each other up in the ring for a while, which of course it's like kids in a candy store, you know. We're trying to do everything we can, like I've seen play out many times. Yep. Guys get in the ring and they're slamming each other, and everybody wants to slam the other guy, but you know, but pretty soon it's your turn. So we're taking big suplexes and stuff, and I'm trying to convince myself that it doesn't hurt that bad, but it did. It felt pretty solid. You know, the first few legitimate bumps I took, I mean, they woke me right up. You know?
I can imagine. Just take the wind right out of your. I mean,
that was the first question I had was, man, are all rings this hard?
You know? Did you know you were getting into this, like showing up there the first day? It's like, dude, you're gonna start getting slammed around and stuff. And
yeah, it was kind of a bit of a shady deal because we paid some fee to do a tryout, but later on, Brad would say, you know, hey, what are you trying out for when you don't know what you're doing? You know, how do you try out for something you've never done before? You know, all we could do, and like a lot of guys do, all we could do is emulate stuff we saw on TV. I mean, there was really no technique or I would say internal logic or psychology, or nothing made sense that we were doing. We were just two guys taking turns pounding on each other. You know? So, but I mean, they got a kick out of it. They laughed at us and stuff. Well, then the tough part was when all the fun and games was over in the ring, we got out of the ring, and with Kurt and with Brad and with Wayne, they did a bunch of amateur wrestling drills, putting a guy on his stomach and then doing a shark bait thing where guys are in 30-second intervals jumping on you, trying to turn you over, and you got to stay in and try to fend them off. We're doing pummeling where an upper body exercise where you're trying to take the guy off his feet without grabbing his legs. We did some pretty hardcore amateur wrestling drills, and it was brutal. I didn't throw up, but it pushed me pretty hard. I felt like I was on fire during a lot of that, and trying to wrestle a guy like Brad Rangens, who had been in, at an Olympic level. There's nothing that I was going to do to that guy to move him or anything. It was impossible, and this is a guy that's trained dudes like a big Van Vader, a guy who could bench press 600 pounds and was a 400-pound dude, and Rick Steiner, and eventually Brock Lesnar, JBL. There was a ton of guys that went through Brad's camp, before and after me. But it was just such a crazy experience getting in there and getting worked over by these guys. And, Kurt Hennig got in there with us too, and he beat up on us as well.
I'm laughing because in hindsight, you got to laugh at it a little bit, but at the same time, like that kind of did happen in the wrestling scene a little bit here and there. As of late, it's been super cleaned up, but back in the day, you kind of didn't really know what you were getting into if any of the literature I read kind of serves me correctly.
I think the protocol was to run guys, in some form or fashion. They would do tons of cardio until they were dog tired, and then the guys that had been around a while that were fresh would stretch them, and then really work them over. And I really hate that, and I've seen other camps, and this is not to put anybody else down either, because everybody's got their own way and methodology of doing things, but the way I was trained is we worked on a lot of our technique and stuff early in the workout when we were fresh. And then at the end, we worked on some of our cardio stuff at the end of the workout. We didn't, some people start, we're getting guys all blown up and tired. And then how do you learn anything when you're you're worried about surviving and getting air? You're not going to be paying attention to how to tie up and put on hammer locks and do reversals and drop toe holds and stuff. I think there's a smart way to do that, and make it less dangerous.
Yeah, I get the concept. It's like there's totally different ways to do everything, and I totally understand this. The kind of what you're going for would be like maybe to teach you what you can do while you're fresh, and that way when you're tired, if you need to do it, then it's instinctual, more or less.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit in conditioning. Obviously, we talk to our students a lot about if you don't have good wind, you're not going to be able to communicate. You're not going to be able to think very clearly because your body's just worrying about surviving. But one of the big things is you take a lot of shortcuts. We all do. It's just that fatigue, makes cowards of us all. And you're not going to punch as sharp or react as good or run as hard to the corners or the ropes. There's a lot of detail work there that just gets really sloppy and lazy when guys get tired.
That's something a lot of people don't think about too, though, is the fact that conditioning comes in it's so beneficial. It's such a big part of pro wrestling. It's obvious to see when a guy is tired on screen. You even mentioned it. There's a term they have for it, which, if people that are non-wrestling fans are listening to this, you're hearing probably lots of terms kind of come out, but being blown up, you come out and you
absolutely.
That was the term they use. You get, if you come out too excited and you throw too many punches in the beginning of the match is too fast, then all of a sudden you get guys holding headlocks for 5 minutes, trying to catch their breath. And it's a telltale sign. You see it if you watch enough wrestling, and I totally get it, man. The conditioning is so important. That going up to Minnesota and wrestling some of those guys and seeing how well they're conditioned, even if they were kind of just picking on you here and there sometimes, but that's got to be insanity just to think about what an Olympic caliber Greco-Roman wrestler would be, conditioned like.
Oh, yeah. We used to joke that Brad had a TV in the upper corner, and we'd be trying to pummel with him and turn him and push him around, and he would just turn us so he could face the TV. We'd be sweating bullets and breathing hard. We couldn't. You couldn't make that guy tired at all.
Oh my
gosh! He was 20 years older than us, but there was just nothing. It wasn't just a level above us. It was several. He was in another stratosphere.
God, that's insane to think about that kind of stuff. So like, so how do you go from training with Brad to ending up like in your first match? Like how did that kind of venture go?
Oh, that was pretty cool. I mean, we worked out, I mean, I met all these guys. I didn't know anybody I trained with, but I trained in a group of 6 guys, and, 3 of us went on to do multiple matches. I had Wicked Lester Brody, who also wrestled as Hardcore for a while, and a real good guy. And then also fought in the UFC, so,
oh, wow.
I mean, he's a pretty accomplished athlete that way. And then another buddy that I traveled with a lot was Mr. Destiny, Big Jay Hanna. He was just a freak, a super strong guy, a lot of fun to travel with and stuff too. But so the 3 of us kind of went on, but we're just working out one day. We're about 3 months in. We were working out every Saturday because we all had, our regular lives and stuff during the week. So I would drive. I lived in northern Iowa here. So I would drive to Minneapolis on Saturday morning. We'd have a 4 or 5 hour workout on Saturday. We'd sleep on the wrestling mats in Brad's camp, me and Mr. Destiny. And then we'd have a workout on Sunday, and then we'd drive home, and that went on for about 3.5 months before our actual first match.
Wow.
But we were just working out in the ring one day, and Wayne Bloom, who did a lot of the hands-on with us. I mean, Wayne was in the ring with us a lot, and he just got out of the ring one time and got on his spiffy cell phone, and he called up Ken Patera right while we were Mr. Destiny and I were running through some camp match stuff, doing some spots and things, and he just talked to him right in front of us and said, "Hey, Ken, I got a couple guys ready to be on a show. What do you got next week?"
Because Jesus,
Wayne was booked on this show. It was a Sunday show in Pepin, Wisconsin, at a high school, and he just right in front of us. He booked us with Ken Patera. If you remember Ken, the Olympic strongman.
Oh yeah.
So that made me freak out, because I remember Ken with the bleach blonde hair, and he cut the hair of Andre the Giant, and he was a part of the Heenan family. I mean, so I was super excited, to be a part of this, and so a lot of work, a lot of travel, up and forth, up and back, and staying overnight, and going through all the bumps and bruises and beatings that it took. I used to have my lifting schedule changed from, trying to do, 5-6 days a week, whatever it was, to 3 days a week. I would lift weights Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and use Monday and Friday as recovery days because you kind of got beat up all weekend.
Yeah.
So you wanted to use Monday just to recover,
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. Like I think about the fact that so many professional wrestlers, even on the indie circuit, like most of them have a regular job aside from actually wrestling. They all work out on top of that. And then almost every one of them travels a decently long distance to wrestle most weekends, and that to me is just how you devote yourselves to something like that is crazy. I mean, I've, as of recently, had to start packing my time into increments and get really to figure out what I need to do to fit into my busy schedule. And I mean, I'm starting to realize that, like, man, there's only so many hours in a day, and some of you guys, I just imagine, like you said, you're not going to drive home after working out on Saturday in Minneapolis. You're just going to stay there on a mat that you worked out on earlier in the day. That's wild to me.
Yeah, it was. It probably sounds rougher than it was, because it was a pretty decent place, and I had another guy there we hung out with, and we'd go out and eat and do whatever. And, so it wasn't like we were making a lot of terrible sacrifices, but that is one thing, the travel in this. And we talked to a lot of new students or potential students in recruiting guys too. And one of the stark realities is there is just a lot of travel. If you have to travel to train sometimes, just like I did. But when these shows start happening, you want to get on shows. I mean, some of these kids are just driving all over, putting a lot of miles, not just miles on the car or dollars in the gas tank, but you're spending a lot of time away from everyone else to chase this. So like a lot of things in life, it has to be worth it to you. You just have to love it that much,
Yeah.
and that's good. I mean, I love that. That's part of the training thing I'm sure we'll get into is it's such a great thing to be a part of, to see that development of guys working their way through the system to eventually be the guy traveling all over the place, living their version of the dream or chasing a bigger dream.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's no different than like this sounds so bad if I say it like verbatim, but like when I first started playing guitar, because I played guitar growing up and stuff like that, but I didn't really have the chops to play well in public, so I didn't do it until I was older. But I joined a band within the last 3 or 4 years, and one of the first pieces of advice somebody gave me was, don't expect your friends to come along with you. And it was kind of like it sounded heartless at the time, but it's like, man, you can't expect your friends to like go on these long drives with you, and like you can't expect them to like take a 2 a.m. phone call to keep you awake while you're driving and stuff like that. Like this is your dream, and you got to want to do this. It's not up to everybody else to help you want to do this,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Or you just meet some like-minded individuals, and maybe when it comes to those long car rides, and I've done this too, I just call other guys that are also on their way home, because they're just driving too, and you can just talk to them now.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, that's one of the big things I did was I travel quite a bit, and I just found people that traveled as well, and went with them on all these kind of crazy trips and stuff like that. But there is a lot of drive time, a lot of time behind the windshield alone with your own thoughts about things. And I mean,
yeah, that is one of the things I always say too, is we all gauge wrestling stardom by the 10 minutes under the bright lights that we so often see on TV or pay-per-view or at the live arena. But there's just so much of that person's life as a performer that goes into just getting to that 10 minutes or 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. It's minuscule compared to the rest of their life just to put them in that position.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was one of those things I started realizing, like going to shows. I mean, if anybody listened to the Troy podcast or any of the prior ones that I've done with professional wrestling people, I mean, I'm not shy about driving to wrestling shows. I've done it a bunch. I'm not a professional wrestler. I'm just a fan, I guess. A little bit of a hardcore fan or whatever. I don't know. But I at one point in time, it was just I'd go to shows on Friday and Saturday nights anywhere I could see them, because those were nights that I knew most of the wrestling was on. So I would just make sure I had those nights off, and I drove, anywhere to go see wrestling. And it made me think sometimes, like, I'm driving to Des Moines to go watch some wrestling, but there's guys driving in from Chicago to wrestle in Des Moines. And it's like, I feel like I drove the farthest to get there just as a fan, and I'm not even the one driving the farthest. The performers are driving farther than that, and it's wild to think about that kind of stuff, to have people driving from one end of the state to the next.
Still happens. Yeah, that's crazy, because that stuff's still going on. That happened a lot in the late 90s for me when I really started going. So I guess getting back to my introduction here, so I wrestled in Pepin, Wisconsin. That was my debut. That was February of 97. So that's kind of when it all started for me. And I tell a lot of people this is, man, that first match was so much fun. I was super nervous, of course, and everything. And the performance is always, the first time out is always so memorable, but always so terrible in terms of where you're eventually going to go with this. So,
yeah.
When you talk about, I'll just try to loop it back really quickly to your comment about your friends coming to see you. So often in wrestling, you have your first few matches, and then all your support, all your people come and see you. But that's when you're really your worst, right? I mean, if there was a way to hide and develop talent for a little while and let them see you about a year in, after you've gotten some confidence and some experience in, you're going to be 10, 20 times better than you would have been that first time. But then, of course, they've already seen you enough, and you probably don't get to wrestle in front of them at that point. So they don't know what you just don't know what you've missed, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, you could always put somebody under a mask, but then they don't know how to develop their character and persona, because they're under a mask. But it's, I totally get it. It's that's crazy.
And at that time, here there was just a couple of us that were from Iowa in pro wrestling. We had me from Northern Iowa, and my buddy Jay that was down in Des Moines. We had Juan Furneaux over in the Muscatine area, but there was just nobody running shows that we could find. Here again, the internet was just getting going. But, there's a lot of old-time guys up in that old AWA. I'd had A. Sharkey up there and Ray Webby and eventually Ed Hellier and the Steel Domain guys got rolling up there. But there were certainly guys in Patera and Sheik Adnan ran some stuff. So getting plugged in, JB Trask had Northern Premier. So starting to get plugged into some of the Minnesota promotions, Minnesota, Wisconsin. I even worked a little bit in South Dakota, but the Iowa bookings were very rare, to find anything going on here. But, I got booked in Nebraska. I actually got to wrestle my trainer, Wayne Bloom, at like a county fair situation in a ball dime, just humongous crowd. It was great. Nails. I bought a pair of boots off Nails, if you remember him.
Yeah, I do.
So I got to wrestle, which Wayne became a hero of mine because he was a great trainer, and I loved working with him that few times I got to. So, I just started to branch out a little bit. And then one of the crazy things that I'll never forget is a buddy of mine that I trained with in Minneapolis, who was from Kansas City. His name was James Grizzly. He was working for Harley Race in Eldon for World League Wrestling, or World Legion Wrestling as it started out. Mm-hmm. And he referred a couple of the Iowa boys, me being one of the two, that he referred to Harley. And back then, I didn't know, I don't even know if I had a cell phone at the time, but I had a landline with a voicemail. I can remember Harley Race leaving me a voice message on my answer machine, and how I had to pace around the house for about 20 minutes to build up the courage and get my heart rate down from 200 to call him back. I was so, I get starstruck and fired up a little bit to call a guy back. It probably sounded like I was running a marathon when I called him, trying to calm down.
Oh God, I can imagine. Like that's something that's crazy. Like this starstruckness doesn't go away 100%, no matter how many famous people you've met. There's still going to be some people out there that are still going to wow you, no matter how many you've met. And even like in a situation like this, you're going to do business with Harley. You're going to work for his company for one match, two matches. How many matches did you end up wrestling down there?
Oh yeah, quite a few. I started in I think 99, and this is how, have you ever seen the Netflix series Ozark?
Okay.
They've got a lot of it filmed in Osage Beach, and Osage Beach was actually the first place I ever wrestled for Harley, and it was great because we had I think it was a 2-day or a 3-day. I think it was a 2-day deal, a Friday and Saturday. So we went down there on a Friday, and he set us up at the marina with a hotel, and me and Destiny each had our own bedroom connected to a living room. I mean, it was a suite. He put us up in a suite.
Oh my
paid
gosh.
us really good for both nights. We really thought we died and went to heaven. As a lot of guys in wrestling will figure out here as they travel on, every time they come to a new promotion and meet a new group of guys, like, oh my God, this is the place to go. I need to move my family here.
Yeah.
We get so excited. I mean, that never happened. I mean, I felt the same way about Minneapolis. I was so excited to be up in that Minneapolis wrestling scene for a while. But then when I got introduced to Harley's crew, I fell in love with them too. It was just a crazy. I mean, we literally pulled into town, and the guy in this huge building says World League Wrestling on it. And there was a guy waiting for us, my old buddy James Grizzly, like, follow me, guys. It was straight to the bar to hang out with the rest of the crew. It was and introduce everybody, and get introduced to everybody there. And it was great. So yeah, we started in late 99 wrestling for Harley. And then, we just kind of worked for him the next few years. My buddy Jay actually did move down there and help train some of Harley's guys for a while at that World League school.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was crazy. And the Harley stuff, working for him and I was always, I guess going back to being starstruck a little bit, I'm kind of an introvert version of starstruck. I've seen enough guys that get all fanboy and crazy and won't leave people alone. And, I want to be the exact opposite of that. I try, no matter how big the celebrity is, I try to leave them alone or very much to treat them like a normal person and not try to take much of their time from them. But
dude,
with Harley,
I'm so glad you said that, because that's like the more famous people I met, the more I realized that's kind of how they want to be treated. Is they don't want people to just always freaking out over them, and a lot of times they'll befriend you more if you just treat them like a normal person.
Yeah. And Harley was just so cool and so good to me personally too. I mean, there's just spent a lot of time just not only in Eldon. When you think about that, coming from Algona, Iowa, driving down to Lake of the Ozarks. I mean, those are some long. That's a 7 or 8 hour car ride down that way too.
Yeah, there's no easy way to get down there, really.
No, Missouri's notorious for not having a lot of if you get off the interstate, everything's a curvy, windy, hilly road.
Yep.
So it's pretty brutal that way. But boy, we had a lot of fun working for Harley. But that led to, in 2001, Harley needed some talent for a backstage fight, or it was a bar fight at the Deja Vu Strip Club in St. Louis. WWE was coming through, and they needed some extras for that. So, yeah, Harley called me up, and we went down there. It was about 10 of us. But for whatever reason, me and my buddy Jay got sat right in the front and center at the strip club, and had to act. I had to, put an Academy Award-winning performance to act like I was having a good time at a strip bar. And then the APA and the right to censor at the time. I don't even remember those guys.
Yeah. APA.
The white button down. Yeah.
APA was like super badass guys. That was Bradshaw. You were talking about him earlier.
Yeah, Bradshaw.
And Right to Censor was, and what Right to Censor was pretty much the no fun guys. It was like Steven Richards and maybe Val Venis and the Godfather and some other people.
Yeah. They changed their names. It was the Good Father.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was Bull Buchanan. Ivory was a part of it, and Stevie Richards, Val Venus. I mean, and really, when you talk about guys like Val Venus, Bull Buchanan, JBL, and I want to say Papa Shango, the Good Father.
Yep.
All those guys are very tall. There was some pretty. Stevie Richards was more of a 6-footer, but the rest of those guys are well over 6 foot.
Oh yeah.
But so this whole bar fight thing breaks down. They're breaking pool cues over each other and beer bottles and stuff, and Bull Buchanan jumped off the stage and punched my buddy, and then he punches me. And it was just the way the whole scene laid out. They did a close-up shot of JBL and Bradshaw, or JBL and Farouk laying on the ground, and I just happened to be unconscious right in between them. So I got some good FaceTime for about 2 seconds during Monday Night Raw.
That's awesome. Maybe I'll have to fire up WWE Network and cruise around and find that footage, man. That's cool. It was a pretty fun day, because we got to go backstage and eat catering with everybody. And it's a whole cool experience because they had, we came in with Harley, but then you see guys like Kane and Undertaker and Triple H and Austin and The Rock, all those guys are there, and they're kind of just, all running up to Harley right away like he's the big celebrity, because he was so well respected and loved. He just had that effect on everybody. And he was always very, very kind to all of them too. Well, it's like it's one of those things, kind of like when I was talking about when I first started watching you, how you were. It was just kind of like, oh, cool. Like this guy's wrestled all over the place. I know he's like one of those guys that's a legend around the area. That's kind of how the other guys felt about Harley. It's a lot of that in pro wrestling. There's a lot of respect for the elders and the people that came before you and kind of paved the way for you. There's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Harley is certainly a guy that, he had to fight his way out of a lot of situations and stuff too. And those are the guys, those are the true veterans that, hey, this whole business that we get to enjoy and have a good time in. They really did, they sacrificed a lot to set the table for us, so you can never respect them enough. And that goes kind of hand to hand with the training process too. When you train and learn how a lot of this stuff works, in a way, it kind of hurts your fandom a little bit because you're seeing some of the magic and what goes into it. Mm-hmm. But the other side of it is it's so physical and so demanding, and there are so many sacrifices. It does give you a whole different level of respect for the people who are very good at it. No matter what you think of guys that you see on TV that have made it that far, or good performers at live events and things like that. Those guys have done so much. It's such a demanding lifestyle, and so many things have to line up to really be at that level. That they just have I have nothing but respect for the people that make it that far, because it's so, and that's something I knew. Right away that, man, two things that really weeded me out very quickly from pursuing this as a full-time career were that, hey, I guess emotionally I didn't like being gone from home that much, but even physically, man, no matter how strong I was or whatever, it was so rough that,
oh man, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Where
did I cut off?
It was so rough. That sucks, man. That's like cliffhanger ending there. But it was demanding on the road because of the time away from home, but it was also demanding because it was physically demanding.
Right. Yeah. That's the only point I wanted to make, is I just didn't think physically, no matter how strong I was or anything durable, it was too tough to imagine doing this 4 or 5 nights a week. I just don't think my body would hold up to it. It is. I mean, that's where the respect comes in, because these guys are given everything they have every time out, and it is a very demanding, physically tough business.
Yeah, honestly, when I was growing up, I was like, dude, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. And I mean, I had the dream everyone else did. That's probably why I'm such a fan. But one of the things that got me down on it was literally the physicality. Like when I went and first started seeing some pro wrestling matches, it was just like, dude, I don't even want to do the simple stuff where these dudes are just taking hip tosses and arm drags for the most part. I don't even want to take a clothesline. Like I don't want to take any bumps. I've seen so many matches that I see, like when somebody takes a hip toss and over rotates a little bit and hits tailbone and not flat, and it's like, oh my God, that's gotta hurt so bad. Just you think like, oh, these people have been trained to try to figure out the best way to land, but it still sucks, if they a little bit of over rotation or under rotation or miscommunication, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this guy got his head taken off, or it's wild to think about that kind of stuff, because it happens, I'm sure, more frequently than anybody wants to admit.
Right. Well, just a real quick example, that over rotation on something like that. I mean, if you land butt first when you're rotating, a lot of times it isn't your butt that hurts you; it's the whiplash effect it has on your head.
Oh, God.
So you can have, you can get an instant headache from landing on your butt. Like that. So, I mean, certainly a lot of things you think don't hurt are the things that, a lot of incidental contacts sometimes are the things that hurt the worst.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, that's the other thing that kind of just blew me away, is like some of the built-in physicality. I mean, it's understandable, but it's still, there's so much that these people go through on a daily basis that even in like what I would refer to as like more developmental matches, the simpler matches, like I was talking earlier, just like arm drags and hip tosses and simple things like that. It's like, that's crazy. I wouldn't want to do that once, let alone repetitively through a match over and over and over again. And then you get to see somebody like take just a regular suplex, and it's like, no, thank you, please. Like, I mean, just the thought of doing that was the thing that, I don't know, even if you watch somebody on TV, like snapping a suplex down, that's the person that's doing the suplex. Like that's gotta hurt too. You watch Eddie Guerrero snapping suplexes down. It's like, that's gotta kill him just as much as it hurts the other guy, Yeah,
I always thought that way about things like a Russian leg sweep or a belly to back suplex where both guys are landing hard, or leg drops. I mean, you're going to jump in the air, land on your own butt just to drop a leg on somebody.
Oh my God!
And I love the move. I love that move, but man, it does not make a whole lot of sense.
No, man, that was one of the things when I was like watching in my younger years, watching like Matt Hardy was the guy that would always do that. It was like, what are you doing? This, like, you miss 50% of the time. It's got to hurt worse when you miss, even, like, I mean, it doesn't feel good when you hit it even. Like, and that's Hulk Hogan point, case in point. The guy's beaten and broken down just from doing leg drops over and over again.
Right. Yeah. And those guys, just going back to Harley too. I mean, they did, everything. They may have bumped less, but they were doing it on much harder rings too. I mean, that was, and just the style of work that they did was much, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Much rougher, because there's certainly some rough physical stuff going on nowadays too.
Oh God!
But I think, and the guy's not even using the ring. They're doing a lot of crazy bumps to the outside, guardrails and that type of thing too. But I always kind of likened, hey, maybe they took less, but I think it was a very hard hitting style, and also on very unforgiving surfaces.
Yeah. I mean, back then there was a lot of brawling involved, but like you said though, when they would take bumps, a lot of the bumps were crazy. It's, pile drivers and power bombs and, just a regular old suplex to the outside. That can't feel good, and just stuff like that. It's none of that's anything I want to do, but like nowadays you got guys doing all sorts of flips and stuff, and just some of the crazy athleticism you see coming out these days. Like we were talking about suplexes, like that's that's too basic of a move for some of the athleticism that goes on nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, you see how the game has sped up so much, and how contemporary wrestling has so many, hard hitting strikes and kicks and so many quick transitions and back and forth. And it's very fast, which, hey, I'm still a fan of everything, and I look at that stuff and say, man, I have slowed way down. I mean, these kids that we've got now coming through, guys like Bryce Jordan and Nathan Edwards, they're just Gable Galileo. I mean, these guys are running all over the place and doing a lot of things that are just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that takes us kind of close to where I wanted to make sure we got to, as far as you knowing some of these younger wrestlers in the area. But how did you meet up with Troy from Impact Pro Wrestling?
That's a great story. And I know he had said this on his interview he had too, is he had booked a show. I kind of met him over a message board, just about trying to put a show together in Iowa, in that Oskaloosa area. And we kind of got it. And I had a ring, because I kind of skipped over some of my stuff too. But I got into training some guys, local guys here, back in the late 99 to 98, 99, 2000. Started actually working with other people because I had enough people hit me up at shows and stuff wanting to get into
cool.
wrestling. So I had I built a ring, a 20-footer.
No way.
And then I didn't like the way, it had a lot of nuts and bolts to it, and it was always needing a lot of maintenance and stuff. So I actually sold it off and then built the 18-footer now that we still travel with. There was a much, much better ring.
Cool. But, that is awesome.
Yeah. So you talk about, the kid in the candy shop. I mean, that's one of those things that, man, I couldn't imagine as a teenage kid, the fact that I'd actually have my own ring and travel around and get to do this. I mean, it is such a lottery win of fun. And I've met so many great people along the way, but no, the getting with Troy here. So I had a little training program that I had guys like Devin Carter and Havoc. Very early on, Kenny Backwash was one of my very first students, who wrestled throughout the Midwest with me on many occasions. I mean, that'd kind of be my deal. I'd go to a town, and I'd have a guy or two booked with me that would help me set up and tear down, but we'd get to wrestle, if not each other, but other guys on the show, and it was kind of a nice package deal. So that's really what happened with Troy, too, is and I didn't know him at first, and I've talked to a lot of guys that say they're going to change the world and do all this stuff, and Troy never said anything like that, but he wanted to put a show on and wanted to rent the ring and wanted me to wrestle on it. He had seen me wrestle in Minnesota when I was up there. And we worked out an agreement. And the day of the show, we had ice in northern Iowa, an ice storm, and I ended up jackknifing the trailer, which luckily my buddy Kenny Backwash's dad owned a body shop, and he had a wrecker to actually pull us straight. It was just crazy.
Oh, man.
Crazy situation. But, yeah, it was probably sunny and nice in February down in Oskaloosa, but it was nasty up here. And Troy had to actually cancel. So the first show we were ever going to do together didn't happen. Then we rebooted in May and ran a show May of 2001 under the banner. Before we called it Impact Pro Wrestling, it was Midwest Championship Wrestling.
Nice.
And it worked out really well because I had some students and stuff there that we could get guys on some of the shows and then, set up and tear down the ring and party till the butt crack of dawn afterwards. It was it was a lot of good times there. But yeah, so I just started wrestling and setting the ring up for Troy back in 2001.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the beginning. You were with him since the beginning of Impact Pro Wrestling then.
Yeah, very first show.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he was so great as far as a promoter that was so well intended. I mean, certainly, early on when you don't know people, you just need guarantees of things. Hey, this is what I get paid, and you have certain expectations, when you come into it. And I think you learn that because if you don't do that, sometimes it goes the other way too. I mean, don't get me wrong, wrestling can be a lot of fun and there's a lot of good people in it, but there's another side to it where it can be extremely selfish. So you have to kind of know what you're getting into and who you're dealing with, and be okay with the situation. But Troy was, from the very beginning, just awesome to work with and super friendly. If you ever talk to him, I mean, a guy can talk forever, and he's very knowledgeable on many subjects. And so we hit it off pretty early on. And just from then on, pretty much every show had me and some of my friends and whoever else that they would book from other areas. And that's kind of what he did to start off with. You had to pull guys in because we didn't have a ton of talent right in Iowa. And it's a much different scene now where you've got different camps and different trees of training and learning that guys are all over the place. Now it's very easy to fill up a show with good talent because there's a lot of good guys all across not just our state, but the surrounding states. But back then, that's kind of how we got things rolling with Impact Pro Wrestling. I think we changed the name to IPW in 2003 when we started running shows in Delta, a really small town in southeast Iowa. And that was just a ton of fun. It was Impact Pro Wrestling was a big deal on a Saturday night in Delta, Iowa, and that felt great. That was a real good time. But boy, Troy, that relationship has been what's really, to be honest with you, I mean, I probably would have turned in my boots, not just boots, my ring and everything many years ago if it hadn't been for his friendship. I mean, he really keeps me motivated and going with this because it's just, I guess, frankly, just too fun to not do. It's just too much fun to not be a part of.
Oh God, that's so fun to hear. I mean, as far as, if it wasn't for people like you doing this and putting on the shows, I wouldn't have had anything to keep me entertained through my 20s, I went to so many Impact shows, whether it be in Algona or whether it be in Des Moines, or your county fair shows. You always had a run of county fair shows every summer. The Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we brought
Hall of Fame show.
Harley. Yeah, just getting back to that Humboldt County Fair.
Mm-hmm.
In 2009, we brought Harley racing for that one.
Yeah, and that was, if I'm being honest, that was the very first independent wrestling show that I saw, that I chose to go to. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I'll go, whatever. And I talked about it on the Troy podcast a little bit, but I remember handfuls of things about it still that are burned in my mind. I remember sitting 5 feet away from Harley race. He's right there, and it was just like, what is this? This is insanity. I'm at the Humboldt County Fair, and some of the most memorable moments of my watching wrestling come from, obviously the first few shows I saw, but I still remember so much about that.
I thought that was funny. I heard your discussion with Troy, and I thought, man, you went in 2009. That was your first one, but we actually opened our permanent training facility that we called the Vault, that we did shows in Algona in 2006, the fall of 2006.
Yep.
We were pretty much running shows every 4 to 6 weeks, just 25 miles north of you.
Yeah, no kidding. And that was the other thing, is like I knew a guy from Humboldt that wrestled. It was Brandon Bost, I believe.
Yeah, Brandon and Dylan both. Yeah. They trained, I believe, right around the 2009 timeframe. I actually wrestled Brandon one-on-one at Rustics, a bar downtown there.
I missed that show, and I'm so mad. I mean, you had people literally jumping out of the rafters at that show.
Yeah, the Supercedo kid dove out of the that was like to watch that, that was scary because it looked like he was skydiving. He fell so far from that balcony.
Yeah.
He was fine. Everything worked out. But, that makes your heart skip a beat when you see stuff like that, and
yeah, to like the average listener listening, you don't practice that. You're not going to run through it 10 times to make sure it works out okay. And that's a kid too. He was such a talented, the kid who played. Did you see Supercedo wrestle much? No. Oh
man, yeah, he was a very talented guy, very quick and sudden, and he could do damn near anything. He had like the photographic reflexes. If he saw it done on TV, it seemed like he could just do things.
Oh, that's crazy. That's super crazy. Man, I mean that is crazy to think though that for like 3 years before I even knew you guys were, I mean, before I knew about going to shows in Algona, you guys were running shows in Algona, which is literally just like 20 minutes from my house, you know? and so I was thinking like, man, that is pretty crazy, you know, for all the years that I've been going to shows up at the Vault in Algona, to think about that. Like, God, I remember the first Vault you guys, because you guys moved on one occasion. You guys were in
right.
You guys were in there. There was like a garage door to the Vault. That was the coolest thing ever, because there was all sorts of seating in there, folding chairs and couches and lawn chairs and recliners, and it was insanely fun to go to shows there.
Yeah, that was. We had a lot of space there, and we used to have a lot of workout equipment there too. That was a real fun place to train, just because you had all these extra amenities. Now, what we gathered, you know, and we've always had heat. That's been a nice thing. A permanent. You could train all winter long and crank the heat up, and you had a refrigerator, and people would do the long drive to Algona, because I mean Algona's not next door to a lot of people. So we had students coming from the Quad Cities or from Omaha or even west of Omaha, and then, or, you know, Minneapolis and down, and they could stay overnight if they wanted to, and they could, you know, work out again on Sunday if that worked out, you know. So yeah, we did a lot of our training on Saturdays, but it kind of became just kind of like the situation that I had, and that's something I did want to create too. Is let's make something as welcoming, and that's something we look at from a training perspective too. Is wrestling is difficult, it is dangerous. And we kind of feel pretty seriously that it's our job to make it as easy and safe to learn.
And
try not to, you know, try to make it a place where the people feel welcome. You know, I always say, hey man, it's not a cult. You know, you need to live your life and do your own thing. But at the same time, I mean, we want everybody to feel welcome when they come in, because we all like the same thing, right? It should bring us together. And you know, maybe the music community is like this, but I know wrestling is even though we all like the same thing, sometimes people just don't get along.
Yeah. I'll say it so you don't have to. Yeah, the music community and the wrestling community have very many parallels in that aspect. I mean, it's rare to see people not get along in pro wrestling, because a lot of times they just won't get booked on shows together or be around each other. I mean, as far as that goes, but from a training perspective, that makes total sense to want to make it as honest and inviting as possible. Does some of that have to do with the fact that is all wrestling training starting to go that direction, or because it's kind of come out of the woodworks, or like how does it differ that way than, you know, like back in the 70s and 80s and 90s? Oh, cut off. Give me just a second here. You cut out there. Oh no, did I lose Travis? Oh no, we're getting.
Hello?
Oh, here we go. We got some audio now.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, so you can still hear me. So like, how did all that differ then till now? And is it all like that now, or?
Well, I don't know. I can only speak for really what we do, and I'm really proud of the effort that me and a lot of other guys have done. And I've been a trainer for 2 decades now, but you never do this type of thing alone. I've had a lot of people help and be a part of that program along the way, guys that really contribute and add a lot to the, you know, I don't know if you ever saw Johnny Fitness wrestle.
Yes.
Have you ever seen him at all?
Yes. Yeah. He keeps in contact with me on Twitter every now and then, even though I'm not as active as I used to be, but it's still fun because he'll still send me messages and tweet me every now and then. It's cool to hear from him.
I mean, I really recruited him hard because I'd worked around him and seen him at the gym and stuff here in town, and he was just such a phenomenal look and a phenomenal athlete. You know, I'd seen him, you know, out and about, but he was cutting promos on people well before he ever got into wrestling. So he just had all these elements that made for a great wrestling star. He had a great look, great functional strength, great athleticism, but a very quick wit to do great promos. You know, just a real entertaining, fun guy to listen to. Man, he was a star before we ever got a hold of him, really, and just a fun guy to be in the ring with or to see wrestle. Just big fan of watching him be in front of crowds.
Yeah.
You know, but he did a lot to help us. I mean, he really, Troy and I really got the Vault, took it up from a training that was in, I trained guys like AJ Smooth and Tony Sly and Matty Starr, Montoya X, Mick Mayhem, a lot of those guys, Devin Carter, all trained in a warehouse space, kind of like a garage stall. It didn't have any heat. It was cold in the winter and hotter than hell in the summertime. And, but we took it up a notch when Johnny Fitness got involved. Him, Troy, and I all went in and we put the vault together in 2006, where it was just big enough where you could have small shows. You probably fit 100, 130, 40 people in there. But it was a great way to advance and evolve the training, and he was a big piece of that, early on. And he contributed to a lot of the actual hands-on training for a lot of our guys. He was very valuable to us, not just in front of the crowd, but training and developing a lot of our young talent.
So, are you still training up there now as the head trainer?
No. So now, I guess to go through some of our evolution there in training is, the whole reason we have had it here in Algona is just because it's convenient for us. We lived here, so all the students had to drive so far. So from 2006 to 2011, we were on Highway 18. In 2011, we actually moved downtown Algona, right on Main Street.
Yep.
And so from 2011 to 2018, we stayed in there, and then in 18, we decided to move it to Collins, Iowa. So from 2018 to right now, we've been working more in central Iowa, and that's worked out really well. That place has got air conditioning. It's a much nicer, more modern training center. But and it's also, it's not quite as big as some of the spaces we've had, but it's certainly big enough. We've got our training ring just stays set up all the time there. We travel with a different ring here, but we just leave one ring set up to train, and the guys from central Iowa have easier access to it. And the guy running the show now is a guy that I worked with in 2007 as an 18-year-old kid by the name of James Jeffries.
No way. That's super cool.
James is coaching guys, and he's doing a fantastic job. But before I say too much about James, I got a lot to say about him and the kind of guy he is. Back, when we trained our first class at the vault on Highway 18, we had guys like Marshall Scott, Justin Decent, Big Country, Anthony Draven, the One Night Stand, Sean Roman. All those guys were in the same class in January of 2007.
That's cool.
And then you get to August of 2007. I want to say 6 to 8 guys in this camp, and the only 2 that really made it all the way through. And not that we're weeding guys out or trying to make them quit. They just didn't make it far enough to actually have matches. But the 2 guys that did, both 18-year-olds in 2007, James Jeffries and the Big Picture.
Oh, cool.
They were actually classmates. Wrestling classmates. They didn't. When they're from different parts of the state, but they didn't know each other before they came to train. But that's what I love about the wrestling. Just like when I went through that process, you're going through a mutual experience with these guys. You're all learning together. You're spending a lot of time together. So even though you don't know each other, you have that bond that kind of ties you, that, hey, we kind of went through this together. It's not like the Navy SEALs or a D1 football program, I like to tell people, but it is something cool that you accomplish and you do it together. There's not a lot of teamwork in wrestling, but that is something where there is a sense of belonging to that. So, but back in 2008, 2 guys that came through that I really had a great time working with were Ugly and Nikki Free.
Nice.
If you remember those guys at all.
I do, yeah.
But Ugly, he was making the trip to Algona from Shakopee, Minnesota, so that's a good 2.5 hours one way.
Jeez.
And when he started, this is what's great about Ugly, and this is devotion too, because when he started making that trip in 2008, he just never stopped. He was either coming to train or help other people train.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So as the years went on, and he was always there and always helping out, he eventually did most of our hands-on, if not all. I mean, at one point it was all of our hands-on. I would come in and sit in, but I mean, he was doing such a great job. It wasn't like I was going to say something. He wasn't missing anything that I was seeing, So I would love to see guys develop and watch them and point out things when I could. But he did a great job with them. And I'll just say this about Ugly work. I mean, working with guys, he was a good coach, but he was just a great guy to watch as a talent, as a performer. I mean, very creative.
Yeah.
And very, very fun to watch. I always, I'm a fan. I see a lot of these guys come off the street and just with a dream. Hey, they just want to give it a try. And I take that pretty seriously, that we're going to do our best to put them in that position, safe and entertaining is what we're after. And to see guys make that progression and get to that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I like to say, to make it to where they're working in front of crowds, just to get that far, it's great. It's a great sense of accomplishment. I'm really proud of the work these guys put in, and then to see guys like Ugly take it and just continue to evolve and become such a fun guy to watch. Well, then I don't just become their coach. I become a fan. I'm a huge fan of guys like Matty Starr and Ricky Love and Nathan Edwards and James Jeffries in the Big Picture. I mean, there's so many of them that have come through. I hate to leave somebody off the list of favorites, because there's a lot of guys I get such a kick out of watching in that ring. But Ugly's certainly one of them. Very memorable. A lot of these county fairs we go to, he's got the ugly stick and the face paint and the charisma, and a lot of guys, a lot of those people going to those shows remember who he is. So
yeah,
he's been a great help to us through the years. But as he wound down his wrestling career, he actually retired in Waterloo at the Hall of Fame show. Then we decided to go with James Jeffries as the head trainer and move the whole operation to Collins. Troy's more involved now. He does a lot of promo classes with the guys and trying to develop characters and stuff. But the thing is, if there's a selling point to training, it's just that the thing people have to ask themselves is, hey, not how much it costs or how far I have to drive to get there. And I get it, because I live this myself. And those are the questions I have too. But the question I would encourage guys to really ask is, what are my opportunities going to be when I finish? Are the people I'm working with going to put me in the ring in front of crowds? And I like to say that because, as you know this, Peter, nobody runs as many shows as Impact Pro Wrestling around here, around the local area. So Troy does an excellent job of creating opportunity, because he's got a great mind for that too. I like the training element and the performing element of it, and he loves the creative challenges of putting these people in a position to live out their dreams and create opportunity for them. Maybe a guy is going to be a manager, a bodyguard, or a tag team partner, or a little brother, whatever the story is going to be, but he's going to come up with some way to introduce new talent and get them in front of crowds, because once you get in front of a crowd, you can only start to continue your evolution of and progression of getting better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no way to really do it other than get out there and do it, there's only so much training you can have, and that goes for literally every job. There's only so much training you can have until you get into a real world situation and you're like, oh, this is an example where this isn't going to be the situation because of this, and you only learn that because of the real world situation,
Right. Now, yeah, I think there's a lot of musical parallels to this. I mean, we can teach guys how to wrestle in front of no crowd and do A, B, and C and tackle, drop down, hip toss, and all these things and heats and comebacks and match fragments and try to put everything together in a camp setting. But then when you put them in front of a live audience, then you have to deal with the stage fright. And this is something we talk to our kids about a lot is, man, there's not a lot we can do to prepare you for that. It's just like you're kind of starting training over in some form or fashion because I liken it to music because you can play the guitar forward, backwards with your eyes closed, but then put you in front of a crowd of a few hundred people and see how that changes your performance.
Yeah.
The nerves and the anxiety and you get amped up,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing I think about how many guys get blown up, there's that term again, from just nerves going out there their first time. Is that a thing that happens?
Oh, absolutely. And I wouldn't limit it to just the first time. Every time I wrestled, I would be super excited and Yeah, my heart would be beating, 100 miles an hour before I ever went out there. But to the detriment, though, is then your energy tank is about half full sometimes when you're starting.
Yeah.
So you do have to manage that. Kind of like the things we talked about before. You're not as sharp on your detail work if you're too apprehensive or too tired.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, that's got to be a crazy thing to try to relay to somebody, or I'm sure being around the training of so many wrestlers over the years, you've kind of dealt with this a lot, where guys come back and they're like, I don't know what happened out there. I went out there at the beginning and it felt like this, and after a while I kind of settled in and everything got normal. But I mean, I'm sure it's just one of those things you just got to go out there and do it repetitively to get used to the fact that you're going out there doing it.
You do, and I've had a lot of preconceived notions about how different people were going to perform. And I'll give you an example of one, kind of going the other way is I saw Sean Roman, who one of our class of 2007 guys, a good friend of mine, but at the time I thought he was real rigid in the ring. He didn't have much personality when we were doing our workouts. And we put him in a tag match down in Muscatine, and boy, when he came in front of a crowd, it was like a different human being, and he was just so, so much personality and charisma and so loud and demonstrative. But when we got to the back, and, I remember running up to him like, where'd this come from, man? I mean, we never saw this, all this personality. You had so much in you that we never saw, Yeah. And, cause I kind of expected to go the other way. I'd expect him to showboat a lot in a camp setting. Mm-hmm. And then have stage fright out in front of people. But yeah, he was a great example of the absolute opposite, and that's great to see too, when people just come out of their shell. And sometimes it isn't a first time thing, and it does take, like with even myself, it took a long time of being in front of crowds to really loosen up and just let it rip, and I worked around some really good guys when I first got started too. A couple of guys like Danny Dominion and Ace Steel. I mean, guys that were, about the same age as me, but had started wrestling way earlier out of Windy City. Mm-hmm. But and they were always super cool to me, and I only got to wrestle each one of them once, but they just had so much more experience, and just guys, and you need guys like that to be there to more experienced people to kind of help you through some of these things as you get acclimated to being live.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from, because you can't really have crowd interaction without a crowd, and you can't really have a crowd at training, because that's what training's for. So you run into this weird situation of how well are these people going to interact with people that get in front of them, and you might end up with a situation where somebody lets something loose that they couldn't have beforehand. You might also run into situations where it's like, one guy's the good guy, the other guy's the bad guy, and how does the good guy know when the perfect time to do what he needs to do is, or how does the bad guy know when he needs to showboat and flex a little bit after he pokes the dude in the eye or something? How does he know when a well-timed poke in the eye is going to work when the crowd is X amount amped up? It's some of those ring psychology things that a lot of people don't ever think about. Kind of like you going into your first training session, and you're just slamming each other around. You're not really working on an arm or anything like that to try to get everyone riled up.
Right. Yeah. Talking about that, that's more like just an adult jumping in, an adult with a kid's mind being in a bouncy house is what that was. But yeah, when it came time to train and for them to actually teach us, I mean, it was pretty serious business. I mean, we could ask questions of things like that, but even then, even in '96, I mean, they were still pretty protective of things. I mean, they didn't want to, and really, I just, I have no ego about this, because I had no idea at the time when I started all these terminologies like mark and kayfabe and heel and fade. I mean, I knew absolutely none of it, so all of that I had to learn I was already training when I started learning some of that stuff.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy, because some of these terms get bantied about, it's sometimes too much by everybody. And you go to a show and you enjoy a show too much, and someone's like, look at this mark. And it's like, what are you talking about? I'm the one here that's like paying the wages to get in here or whatever. But it's, I don't know. Some of it is just it's a crazy thing to try to get into the world of wrestling, and how deep people want to let you in once you kind of get in. Because even nowadays, it still is a little bit shielded.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think part of it goes in. You want to protect it a little bit just because of the magic we talk about. We don't want to know exactly how the magician's not cutting the woman in half. I think that's the popular reference, right? We know she's not being murdered, but you kind of want to know and you kind of don't. You watch these exposés on things too, on magic in particular. I think wrestling draws a lot of parallels to other forms of entertainment, and
yes.
Go as far as comedy, rock shows or concerts, just like putting matches together or shows together. You want to hit them with something really solid right away, but maybe not your best thing, but something right up there, right out of the gate. Whether it's a comedian delivering a real strong set that he's got to get things rolling, get people loosened up, or it's a band, they're going to play one of their top 5 hits first, to let you know they're there, mean a business. You're going to have a good time. I think there's a lot of things that you can see, and as shows build or as matches build, you can see just the parallels of concerts. I love going to concerts, but if there's 4 bands on the bill, the first 2-3 bands don't have all the pyro and lighting and stage props that the last few bands do, right?
Yep.
The show builds, and oh man, this guy's on a boom now, and now we got freaking lasers and all this other crap. It builds, and they just keep exposing you to bigger and bigger things, and hopefully that's how matches can be built, and that's how shows kind of are. The match is kind of a microcosm of the show in some aspects. Just how it should be built.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, I've always been entertained by that. I feel like there's a lot of actual psychology that goes hand in hand with wrestling. Not too long ago, I was listening to a psychology podcast, and they were talking about some of the aspects of the terminologies that people in the this is going to be so weird. Like back in the day in wrestling, if you were a mark, you were somebody that believed it was real, and a mark to somebody in a carny setting is somebody that's easy to trick out of their money, and that's where the term originated way hundreds of years, 100 plus years ago.
Yeah, the mark was actually because they would take chalk or coal or some means, and they would actually mark the clothing of a person that they thought they could swindle money from, so that as that person went around the fair or carnival or whatever, other carnies would know they could take advantage of the guy.
Yeah, I mean, so
that has a real deep-rooted ancient terminology there.
So a lot of these terminologies actually come from these weird psyche things that you can think about as far as just general things like that. It's a very deeply rooted thing as far as terms and the way psychology works out. Even just from a fan to watch wrestling, I know how some of the stuff happens, but not knowing how the match is going to play out is probably the most fun aspect, because it's kind of like you said, if you show someone how you saw the woman in half, the next time you see somebody saw a woman in half, you're instantly just going to be cynical and be like, well, that's dumb because they're hiding it this way, or whatever. I've seen the 3 cups and the 1 ball trick. This is what happens. And it's
yeah, I hated the wrestling exposés where they showed people putting microphones underneath the ring to make it sound louder, or promoters handing signs to fans as they came in to make it look. We've never done anything, and I have never seen anything like that happen. I've been on a lot of shows in a lot of different places, and I don't know that I've ever seen anybody do that. I'm not saying it hasn't happened or doesn't happen, but it's got to be pretty rare.
Yeah, you got to assume in some of the super big shows like WWE, they got to mic the ring up, because otherwise how are they going to hear it? Where's the mic audio coming that you hear these guys slamming in to the ring? There's got to be a microphone somewhere near the ring. So there's obviously different places where you kind of, just based on the sound aspect, would have to have something like that set up. But
an amplified bump.
But you're not pumping in crowd noise and things like that into the vault or down in Des Moines at your Des Moines shows and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, none of our county fairs were never miking the ring or anything like that. I think things like that are done to kind of cheapen an already. Wrestling has kind of a tough image anyway, and a lot of people look down on it, and you're kind of constantly fighting that. So I hate when there's more gasoline thrown on that perspective, because we never talk about anything that's good, or the money that's been raised for charities and things like that through professional wrestling avenues. It's always got to be something negative. And maybe I've just got a sore spot for that, but I'd rather, hey, there's a lot of good out there and a lot of good folks out there. So, hey, let me wrap it back towards James Jeffries. We talked about him being in that class of 2007. Mm-hmm. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you a little bit, is because I have so much exposure to all these guys that are currently out in the Midwestern wrestling scene now. But I don't think they come any better than James Jeffries. So he was a great choice as far as how he was as a student. He was an athlete in high school and a great student we had training. I mean, I talk about there's just been a handful of guys that come through, and we've had some good guys here lately, but guys like Nathan Edwards, like Matty Starr, and like James Jeffries, in my mind, stand out as guys who they'd run spots, they'd run drills with other guys, and they're always helping guys up, high-fiving, and being a good teammate that way, and that's something that I love to see. That he was a good, James Jeffries was a good teammate from day one, always trying to help guys, and that's like Nathan Edwards too. When guys are in a camp setting and they could be thinking of, hey, what am I going to do? It's all about I all the time, but these guys, I can remember seeing Nathan Edwards coming up with stuff for Tyler Jones, hey, you could do this or you could do that, and really trying to help broaden other guys' offensive moveset instead of just worrying about themselves all the time. I love seeing some of that unselfishness play out in the camp setting, and also day of the show. Guys are trying to help each other, and everybody's putting their hand in that pile, and that's very rewarding for me to see guys mature, not just as performers, but as adults too, and just being good to each other that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be crazy as you watch these guys just slowly start to go from being somebody that's being trained to just, without knowing it, helping train somebody else, whether it be with just like a friendly high five, like you said, or like helping them run through something else, or giving them a pointer on some of their move sets. Oh, maybe you toss one of these in there or something like that.
Yeah, just being supportive, because you never know. I mean, everybody, there's 6 guys that are working out like we have now, a group of 6. A couple gals and 4 guys, but you don't know really what their support system is like outside of these 4 walls. Hey, we all want to be positive and push each other to be better, but you don't know if they've got a lot of support at home or they're in their circles. So I think it's great when they have a place to come to that's inviting, and again, it comes from the top down. It comes from Troy, from me, from James Jeffries, and that's why James is such a great pick to lead this too, is because you couldn't find a more loyal guy, a more true guy that you would want others to emulate, as far as how hard he works at being, and I like to use the word ambassador, because he really embodies what I would like people to think of when they see him perform and they see him taking pictures. He always has time for every kid, every fan there. If they want a picture, they want an autograph, if they want a minute of his time. I mean, he has time for everybody. He's never, the moment's never too big. He himself's never too big for anybody, or So I just think, I don't know. So maybe I'm not articulating that as well as I mean it, but if you would want a poster child for how we would like guys to show up, the closer they can, if they aim to be as valuable as James Jeffries is to us, I mean, that's a great goal to have.
Yeah, I mean, he's always one of the first people out there talking to fans at intermission, and always one of the last people to go back after talking to fans. He's always super friendly. He's been super friendly to me. He's friendly to everyone. I don't know if I've ever seen him not smile unless somebody was beating on him,
And there's certainly an element. The guys are trying to sell merch and stuff, but with him and with a lot of guys too. I don't want to just say he's the only one like this, but with James, it's genuine. I mean, he wants to do well. He wants Impact Pro Wrestling to do well. I mean, any promotion he's working for, he wants everybody to succeed, and he wants everybody that buys a ticket. And this is the important thing. He wants everybody that's giving them a Saturday night of their life, to be entertained. He wants to make sure we're doing our job there, So that's a big thing to me is, hey, the ticket price is one thing. Hey, it's $15 in Des Moines to go see wrestling, a night of wrestling, the best we can possibly give you. But hey, you're giving us a Saturday night. We don't take that lightly. I mean, everybody works all week to get to Saturday, and we want that to be as fun and memorable as we can make it. So, and that goes from developing the actual talent to Troy putting the shows together, booking out the angles and the feuds and how we're going to introduce different people and where do we go next time, this episodic format. I mean, there's so many things and so many really hours spent on prep, and we talk about that a lot in the training dome, and that is, hey, we all take it very seriously, the time and money people pay to let us do what we love to do. So I guess they deserve, I'd like to say, and this is something we kind of put in our little handout to our students too, is, hey, they deserve our best preparation, our best execution, so that's something that we're constantly, all of us working together, shooting for.
Yeah. It's so good to have a positive support group like that, and to know your general purpose, like the fact that these people, not only you guys as a group, as wrestlers and promoters and everybody putting the show on, you guys aren't the only ones sacrificing a night to do something. It's all the people that are going to see you live as well.
Oh,
they're sacrificing their night as well.
Yeah, no, and I guess maybe I didn't say that. That's what I meant. Yeah, is it the fan? Yeah, the fan is giving us that time.
Yeah, I was just reiterating. I mean, that's very important to think of, because if you guys wanted to, you could run a show every weekend and just kind of half-ass it and call it good enough, but that's not going to be memorable and exciting for the people that are going to see the show. You're not shortchanging what you're bringing to the table. You're coming there with your A game, with a bunch of the best wrestlers, like you said, the best ones that around the area has to offer, and it's really cool to actually to see that all come together, because if you think about what goes into putting together a pro wrestling show, just putting the show on is not even half the battle. You got to find people, and in your case, you end up training some of them out of necessity.
Yeah. Well, you always need new talent. I mean, certainly there's a monetary aspect to it, but this has never been a cash grab for us. And I think that there's a little bit of separation with us and possibly some other groups that, it's never been a cash grab for us. It has been about the dream fulfillment business, or developing talent that we can trust. And that's why, I mean, I know Impact Pro Wrestling, it probably has a stigma with others within the Midwest that maybe being cliquish, or, that we keep to ourselves. We always would love to bring other talent in, and we have in the past, guys we didn't train. And there's a lot of great guys out there we didn't train. And, I'll be the first one to admit it. But they really have to add a lot of value to our shows to not use the guys we've already developed. I mean, we trust the guys we have, you know what I mean? And that's not to say we don't trust other guys. I don't want to take any negative spin from this, but when we do add guys from outside our core training group, it is because we 100% believe they are going to make our show better, whether it's athleticism, personality, fan interaction. And that's maybe why I bonded so much with Troy early on, is I knew it was very clear early on that he was all about giving to the fans, giving the fans what they're paying to see, and putting them first. And then, with Troy, he puts the fans first, and then he puts his workers right after that. And, he always financially will put himself last. I mean, he's not in it for his own gain. He's very unselfish, which I've told a lot of our students that too. And just talking about Troy, is there's a lot of guys that start a promotion that want to be the CEO or the frickin' champion. A lot of wrestlers would want to start it, and they want to be the champion, and they want to be the general manager, whatever, a position of authority and power and ownership. Mm-hmm. And Troy, if anything, has been more of a silent partner. And from talking to him, he's never silent. And he's got a million things to say behind the curtain. Yep. But in front of the audience, he lets the performers and the show speak for itself. And that's so rare, that unselfish attitude. I mean, that's all he wants to do is give the fans the best possible wrestling show that we can on multiple levels.
That's one of the funnest things you're talking about, Troy being kind of a silent partner. He does interact with the crowd. He's there at shows. Every now and then he'll get on the microphone and say something if he needs to say it. But for the most part, like you said, he's kind of just running around in the background, kind of making sure everything's going off without a hitch.
Oh my God. Yeah. He's very much in control of everything. You know, I mean, I say that silent partner just because as far as the fans see, I mean, they probably just don't understand how much he's pulling the strings of everything, you know?
Yeah. And that, I think, if just me going to a bunch of shows and seeing that that's how he operates, every now and then when something in the ring gets out of control and he actually does go in the ring to cool some people off, it kind of makes it a little bit more real, you know, because it's like, what's he doing? He's never in the ring. He's never jumps in the middle of the fracas, and here he is trying to separate people.
You know, a couple of things I really loved that Troy was involved with is back when the Big Picture, we banned the Big Picture for a year. He threw a fireball in Billy Jay's face. When Troy ran out there, Big Picture punched him in the gut and dropped him, and Troy went down like a stack of bricks. And I thought it was just watching that back on the tape. I just laughed my ass off. You know, it was awesome. Then, you know, a few months ago, we had Dalton Cooper interfere with a match, and we were throwing him out, and Troy tackled him first, and we started running him to the back, and I don't know if Troy tripped or what, but I just saw Troy hit the deck. You know, I couldn't stop laughing. You know, it was crazy. It was just a crazy situation. We all got caught up in the moment. But it's a lot of fun. You know, a lot of our fun. We have a lot of, you know, Troy's notorious for throwing these huge parties at his home after shows and stuff, and he was notorious for throwing huge parties at the bar, and I couldn't have jumped in the sidecar quick enough. You know, back in the early days of Delta, we would stay at these bars until they threw us out, you know, and we had such a great time, you know, in all these places we've been. So there's just a lot of history there. We're working on our 20th anniversary show for pretty much a year from now. Yeah. And there's just a lot of history there because we've run a lot of shows. We put a lot of miles on together, a lot of hours on the phone. He's just been a great friend to me, both in and out of wrestling. So I certainly couldn't say enough about how his relationship with me has kept me, you know, having a great time, which this is all about, you know, is if you're not having fun doing it, you got to get out of the way and let somebody else have fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the way it is, and as far as I can tell in the music scene too, you gotta want it. You gotta know that it might not be a cash grab, and you gotta have fun while you're doing it. Because if you're not having fun, then why are you doing anything if you're not having fun, really?
Yeah, and that kind of goes with some of the other places that offer wrestling, you know, in whether it's training or shows that we're trying to get with businesses and things too, is, hey, that is where there is a little bit of legitimate competition. And I've always been of the thinking that if someone's going to spend thousands of dollars on bringing wrestling in for their event, for a civic event or whatever, or someone's going to pay someone to train them to be a part of this wrestling business, I would never, you know, I guess my thinking is, I know we're going to give them everything we have, whether it's putting a show together or we're training somebody. So if there's money that's going to change hands, I'd rather it be filtered in to Impact Pro Wrestling, because I know where we're at and I'm directly affected by it. So I have more fun when we get more shows booked, you know.
Yeah.
It's funner to train when you have multiple students training all the time. And we've been very fortunate in a lot of avenues, both with students and both with shows. So it's been very, very fortunate with the relationships we've had that it's gone really well. So I guess that's where the competition may come in, is I'd love to see everybody who's going to do that choose us.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the fact that, I could totally see the relationship factor of how many like county fair shows you guys do and continue to do. You know, it's one of those things where you guys wouldn't get these bookings every single year after year, or you know, like we're gonna do the Boone County Fairground every other year, and you know, stuff like that. You don't get those bookings if you're not good. So that's a real feather in our cap, because and we don't take that for granted ever. I mean, we very much appreciate the places that have taken a chance on pro wrestling. You know, I mean, and this is something Troy and I have talked about many times. If a fair or an event brings in a country music act and nobody shows up to see it, well, they don't ban country music for the rest of their lives. They'll just try somebody else. Yep. You know, because there's no brand recognition in wrestling. If wrestling fails and there's no crowd, well, then
they don't bring anybody in, not us, not any other group in the state or anywhere around. They write off everybody who's involved with wrestling. And that's the tough thing that we're fighting uphill against. So when people do take a chance on us, we're very appreciative of that fact. And we always try to, and really it doesn't change the goals of always trying to hit a home run, but, yeah, we're very appreciative of the fact that that's a huge referral business. You have to have a good customer satisfaction to get referrals, or it just kills you right away, because it goes just as quickly the other way. If we're doing a bad service in forms of these shows, then they would write us off and badmouth us to someone else, and we would never get another one. But that's been fortunate for us, is that it's gone really well. Yeah, I couldn't be happier with that situation.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the first shows I went to, was a county fair show. It was just, hey, I got nothing else going on tonight. I'll go check this out, see what's going on. And I ended up really enjoying it and going to see not just your company, but other companies, perform all across the Midwest, because of you and Troy and all the people you trained and the great wrestlers that were there the first night. And the show that you guys put on was tons of fun too.
That Humboldt Fair in 2009, that was a pretty packed audience. I had a picture. Somebody had a picture of Johnny Fitness, I think, in that Humboldt Reminder or paper down there that I kept of that. And that the background, it's a picture of Johnny Fitness slapping high five with somebody, but in the background, the stands look just completely packed.
Yeah, it was very full of people. I remember I went there with a handful of my friends because we were like, yeah, whatever, we'll go see what's going on. But after a while, it was like, dude, this is actually like tons of fun. Once you suspend a little bit of your preconceived notions, cause
right. That's the battle is, hey, people are going to be expecting one thing. Are we going to blow them away with giving them something much more than their bottom line projection of what they're going to see? Right.
Yeah.
And that's just it. That's something we talk very openly about is, hey, I mean, no matter what preconceived notions people have, let's go out there and make them, hey, are we going to make lifelong wrestling fans from one show? Probably not, but hey, we can give them a good time, and they can appreciate the work and effort and entertainment of what they're seeing, hopefully at all levels, if they're open-minded at all.
Yeah. I mean, and that's some of the funnest parts about going to shows as an adult and seeing people that bring their kids there, is watching people's kids go absolutely bananas because they don't have any of that cynicism in there,
Oh, yeah.
Everything,
it's wonderful.
It's so crazy because, I mean, that's got to make the wrestlers that are up there wrestling, it's got to make them feel like, oh, that's me as a kid out there just going nuts,
Oh, yeah. It's so humbling. I think it was always humbling for me, and I think for a lot of the talent is when you're in that position where everybody looks at you like you're the superhero, you're the mega athlete, or you're the celebrity that's not from around here type vibe you're giving. People are asking for your autograph, and
mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very humbling thing. And that's something, I think you try to do the right thing ethically and try to say, hey, once you have that level of celebrity, I mean, it may be a very small fleeting level of celebrity, but once you have that, let's try to make it as positive as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
For those kids. I mean, let's let them remember that they got to take a picture with Ugly and the Ugly Stick, or James Jeffries and the IPW Heavyweight Championship belt,
mm-hmm.
And that's where James has a lot of value, and Ugly and a lot of these guys are just very giving of their time, and that's really a lot of these guys. The wrestling is just a way to get to the fan interaction that's fun afterwards. I mean, just some of those moments that hopefully that those kids won't forget, or their families won't forget. As a father, getting to see your son or daughter get fired up and have some level of interaction with the performer. I mean, that's one thing that a smaller show like an IPW show versus WWE. Hey, not all 20,000 people get to meet John Cena.
Yeah.
Or Roman Reigns, but if all 200 people or 300 people want to meet James Jeffries, they can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the coolest parts about going to a wrestling show, was like finding a wrestler. You're like, I like this guy, I'm going to buy his shirt. And then you like go meet him, hey, sign my shirt. And then after you go to a handful of shows, kind of like up at IPW, you guys, like after the show would just head next door and have a few beverages. And I'd squeak over there and be like, hey, what's going on, guys? And everyone was super cool, and you get to meet the people on a personal level, even if you want to. nobody's really that unattainable as far as independent wrestling goes. And that was one of the coolest things about it, was you get to realize these people are A, real people, but B, at the same time, you're such a fan of their performance and their wrestling and their character and how they portray themselves when they actually get under the bright lights. And you know, it's really neat to actually make some of these friends that way and watch them progress and grow.
Or some of the contrasting personalities, how guys act as opposed to what you'd expect. And one of my favorites is, and I tell you, admittedly, I got a lot of favorites, but Malice. If you know Malice at all, the big 400-pounder, he's got hair everywhere and he's big and he's a brawler and hardcore and all that and kind of wild and unmanageable. But boy, he is one of the funniest guys to be. I just love having him around, backstage or at the bar or whatever. I mean, he's constantly, especially if he has somebody that he can victimize a little bit with some of his insults and stuff too. Like he's got a couple friends that he keeps around, I think, just to be punchlines for a lot of his comedy. But he's just a hilarious individual, and he's kind of been like that since day one. We started working with him back in the late 2000s, and boy, he came in and he kind of like, wow, we got this big kid, and he turns, right away he's cutting up on something. Just very quick-witted, really funny guy. A lot of fun to be around. AJ Smooth's a lot like that too. He's pretty quick and always got some smart line or something to throw at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I remember from the first show I went to was AJ Smooth. His ability to be mouthy was very, very good, and he was a heel then, which was a bad guy, and I mean, that's where you're talking about Malice. Even when Malice is playing not a bad guy, he still seems, like you said, very unwieldy. He seems like you probably still wouldn't want to meet him because he's just so aggressive, and then you meet him and he's like, wow, this guy's actually really tons of fun, Gave me a pile of crap the first time I ever saw him, so he's in it just to have fun. He's not out there trying to hurt anybody's feelings either.
I don't know if I've ever seen a human being consume as much alcohol in a sitting as that guy either. I mean, he would certainly be on any drinking team. He would be the anchor man. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's kind of. I've drank a lot of beers and mixers in my life, but man, I mean, he is the anchor man on the IPW drinking team, no doubt. But he's a great guy, and he's another guy that. I mean, you talk about traveling and stuff too. I mean, he had I want to say 3.5, close to 4-hour trip just to come to Algona to train. And he did it for months at a time, and really put the commitment in to be here and keep getting better. So, I mean, that says a lot. I mean, that there is a sense of accomplishment because these guys do go through a lot just to make it here. We may only see them for 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it is at a time. But there's just a lot of effort that goes into it. And he was a guy too that he might have worked a third shift where he may have gotten off work, never slept, drove all the way here and did his workout and everything too. So just tremendous. That's just it. You see all these people, you just don't know how much it took to get them to the front door sometimes. To get them to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody's listening to this and they actually want to get involved with any sort of training, I mean, I do have a pretty wide audience base that listens to pretty much every episode. So if anybody's listening, they want to get a hold of you, the best place, I'm assuming, would be the Facebook page.
Yeah, I think the way the world works now, we used to have a website, and I think we still do, that you can contact us through. But certainly the IPW Vault training page on Facebook is the best way. You can message us through there, and we have free visits. Not like I have, I say this. I don't say it with a disdain for how I was brought in, because I absolutely loved my experience and the guys who worked with me. But there's no tryout fee for something you don't know how to do yet. So we do have free visits. You can come in, and this is very honest and open, because you get to look at our guys working out with other guys, meet the coaches, meet other kids in the same, or adults. I say kids because everybody's younger than I am, but see all these other people going through the same process you're thinking about doing, and get to talk to them and ask them questions. And hey, they're living the life that you want to live, or the wrestlers that are on these shows. I mean, they've gone through it, and that's a sense of attainment, because everybody you see on those shows had to go through quite a bit just to be on a show. We don't just go to High Spots or a website and order boots and just start outfitting people and you're a champion now. I mean, that's just it. Is that there's a level of achievement for all these guys that have made it that far. So. That's what I love about those visits of the training center is, hey, you get to meet people and kind of see the whole thing. It's a very transparent look at what it's going to be like.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll put a link to the Vault Impact Pro Wrestling training facility down below, as well as all of the Impact Pro Wrestling links. This is another one of those things. It was just like with Troy. As much as I've sat down and talked to you before, during, or after shows, it's nice to actually be able to, like, one-on-one get you non-distracted and kind of see what got you to be where you're at today. And it's really cool. Like I said, I've talked to you a bunch, but there's a lot of stuff that's come out here that I've never actually known about you. So it's really kind of neat to.
Yeah, and I've known you, it seems like, for years, but at the same time, like you say, not distracted, because I'm one of the worst guys at, when a show's going on, of being so flighty and scatterbrained that I admittedly very hard to talk to at times. It's got to be, you got to have a drink in your hand and the show's all over, and the stress and not that it's stressful, just you just don't want anything to go wrong, and there's not a whole lot when the show's actually going. There's not a lot I can really do to influence things one way or the other. But, you just always want people to put their best performance out. And I think that's where I can still help is in a mentoring or coaching role, and just be a supporter. And that's been such a big thing for me in all my engagement. I've had very good friends. I mean, I had a lot of my high school friends, and like here I say, I'm 47. A lot of my high school friends have seen me wrestle and been a part, either managed me on a show or been a ring announcer or a DJ. I mean, I had a lot of great friends that have been very supportive throughout my career, but it really starts with the woman I married. I mean, my wife has been a huge supporter, from day one. And that's been something you can never overlook or leave unstated is the level of impact that these people have on you that kind of put you in a position to live out your dream. Mm-hmm. And I want to be that's what I want to be for other people too, is just a guy that's in their corner. Hey, you're on our show, you're working with us, and we have a vested interest in giving you what you're in it for, and that's something that I would love to be. I would love to be a positive thought in someone else's memory. That's a humbling thing on a training perspective too. I mean, these guys could have trained a lot of different places for less money that were closer to their house or whatever the case may be. But the fact that they trusted us to take them on that training journey, I'm very proud and humbled to be a part of their story. So I'm very appreciative of the people that have trained with us, and I want to help them in every way that we can help them progress. So that's something. Yeah, I guess I would like to be that guy. For a lot of people, is be the supportive people, because like I said before, you never know what kind of home life people have, where they come from, and how much support they have. So I don't want to ever be a barrier to someone else.
That's very well said, man. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to, talk to me about all these kind of things, because it's really cool that we have the availability in Iowa for somebody to be trained in pro wrestling, and not only that, but actually have the availability to wrestle on shows once they are trained. And
that's what it's all about, man. I think it works hand in hand. I mean, you have a training school, but then you also have on the job, once you get through there, you're on the job training, and the frequency of shows is a big deal, and opportunity on shows. I mean, if you're going to run 100 shows a year but use the exact same roster every time, then you're not creating any opportunities. And I think that's where we diversify our talent and mix things up. And I think that's where Troy really has a passion for plugging talent in. So yeah, I think he does a great job with it. And I think the guys we've had all along the way in the training process have just been phenomenal. I've been very proud of the work they've done, and glad to have them on the team and be a teammate with them. So it's exciting. I wish, you have more time to deep dive into some of these guys that we've worked with, and you can never say enough names of all these great characters we've had, all throughout our history, because in the end, we've worked with well over 100 guys, in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them you may never have heard of, but there's always a story to go with it. And it'd be cool down the road, I guess, in a podcast setting where a guy can just throw it on and ramble on forever and listen to it at work. It'd be cool to hear you get a few more of the guys on here, and maybe not just IPW guys, but just guys that have different stories and stuff too, and just share some of their history with us too.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted, like when I first started going to wrestling shows, I was like, I gotta do a wrestling podcast. I always wanted to be a radio DJ guy or whatever, but I stuck to Twitter because that's what I did best, and there was already a wrestling podcast at the time, which was Shotgun Wrestling. And
those guys are great. Yeah, it's too bad to hear Zach Grigg just recently passed. It's just that's a terrible loss for all of us that knew him. I mean, he was always a positive guy, always fun to be around, and he'll definitely be missed. And it really stinks at a time like this with the pandemic that funerals and celebrations, life visitation, any type of gathering where you can get together and talk to some of the other people that knew him. You can't do that so much now, but I hope there's a time soon when all this stuff settles down and people can get together. And I'm sure there'll be several things that can be said, both behind the curtain and in front of the audience, to appreciate Zach publicly, and just terrible loss to the wrestling community.
Yeah. What he was doing was so good that I didn't even want to try and step on his toes or do something parallel. So that was like the whole reason I just stuck to Twitter, was like, he's got this on lockdown. And, like I said, that is a sad thing to see anybody in the wrestling community leave us. Cause that's another of those crazy things. I've been watching wrestling for about 10 years and I've seen a handful of people, in our community kind of pass, and it's wild. It's crazy to think, you really do become kind of a small community within yourselves.
Yeah, and you could never take it for granted, that, and really it doesn't have to be anything as heavy as a death either. I mean, guys, life takes all of us in different directions, and guys start developing families. That's something I think you and Troy touched on that too. Mm-hmm. Is that there's so many, just because of Impact Pro Wrestling, because of a training, just because of Troy and I becoming friends and having this thing together. There's been people that have met their significant others and had children and friendships and all this stuff that's just kind of branched out. Now, in no way do I say, hey, we're responsible for all this, but it's cool that you hear again play just a piece of the puzzle, just you're part of someone's history that way, mm-hmm. and it's a great thing to be a part of. It's cool to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Dude, it was really great, actually, to have you and Troy come on here back to back, because it was like we got the yin and the yang of IPW, as it were, I guess. We got one side of the story and the other, and we can, it's really cool. Anybody that's listened to Troy's that came back to listen to this one, super thanks. If you're listening to this one, you didn't listen to Troy's, go back and listen to Troy's. You get the other side of the story. So it's really cool. You guys even ended up bookending WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, that's Troy's been a great friend. I heard his podcast. I get pretty fired up. It makes me laugh. And of course, a lot of the stuff I've already heard him say and stuff. But it's cool to hear him go over a lot of that. It's a fun business to be a part of. It can be a very fun and rewarding thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Even from a fan's aspect, I got to say that it was tons of fun going to shows. Literally. IPW shows. For a while, you guys were running matinee shows to help out with some of the people that were training.
Oh, man. I love the matinee concept, because that was really geared towards just, hey, let's break the students in front of any crowd, whether it was 10, 15. I mean, there was times we had a birthday party or something, had 50 people there or something, but mm-hmm. But the problem we had is if we didn't have a big crew training that day, then I would get stuck throwing a mask on or doing something. And I was like, man, I'm kind of done wrestling, guys.
Yeah, thrill cat.
I just don't have the stamina. I just don't bounce right back up anymore. So yeah, I was getting stuck wrestling too often. But I did. I love the the intention of the matinee, and really in practice too. They were a lot of fun while we did those.
Yeah, those were tons of fun. I talked a little bit about it in the Troy podcast, but like watching people go from their very first matches and watching them grow and be like, oh, they're getting it. You know, they're figuring out what they got to do to get their character in there, and they're smoothing out all their moves and everything. It's really cool to watch people develop. You know, once you watch enough wrestling, it's kind of nice to have that aspect in there as well.
Yeah, it was. It was just a weird, small version of having like a little farm league for us. You know, I mean, yeah, it was. It was a cool time, and got to, you know, certainly got guys in front of audiences that's. Yeah, you can't put a price on that sometimes. Just an extension of the training. And, I was really glad we did that when we did.
Yeah, I mean, one of my most memorable things at a matinee show, it was a smaller one. Like you said, there was probably 10 or 15 people there tops or something around that area. But the people brawled outside the ring, brawled around the entire crowd, and then went back in the ring. And I was like, dude, they just went into the crowd and went around the entire crowd and went back in. If you say it verbatim, it's crazy. But, you know, like it's just the fact that they did it, you know, it's like, that's nuts. That's tons of fun, you know?
You know, I know we had some guys that were already wrestling on all of our shows in Sparrow, you know, and Sparrow was another one. I just such a fan of his, and you know, and seen him kind of grow up as a man and everything too. And now he's a family man, and but wrestled Ricky Love, you know, and Ricky Love had been wrestling. Ricky Love was a fantastic athlete. He played college soccer, and you know, I'm a huge fan of his as well. But I think those two guys wrestled on a matinee show. It was a little bigger. I think it was like a birthday party one or something, and they're fighting outside the ring, and one of them Ricky Love got slammed into the wall, put a big hole in the wall. Like, my God, you guys are tearing the building down on a goddamn matinee, you know? I mean,
oh my gosh.
You know, if you remember, we had our wall of fame with all the pictures of everybody, you know, all the 8x10s and stuff up on the one wall. I think he got thrown in right below that and caved in the wall right there. You know? That's where
the IPW banner hung over. Was the
I was notorious for that at our other vault. Every time we'd hit the ropes and put an elbow through some of the sheetrock, another big poster would go up, another banner would cover up the hole, you know.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, man, it's so fun to, like I said, just sit down and talk with you about the progression of all this. It's been, you know, almost 10 years I've been going to shows now, and you know, like you said, 2009 was that Humboldt County Fair show that you did. So it's crazy that I've, you know, known you and Troy and all these wrestlers this long. You know, like I've talked to more promoters than wrestlers on the podcast here, but it's crazy to sit down and actually talk with you guys and hear your stories and realize that, you know, I've spent so much time in and around things that you guys have created entertainment wise from the ground up. You know, you're not just booking a show with already established wrestlers and in a place that already has a ring set up. Like, come to find out, you built the ring, you know, and
that's a real thing. You know, I mean, nowadays you can just get a credit card out and have it shipped to you, but back then, I mean, I got specs from Ken Patera and you know, I took designs from Brad. Brad had an old WCW wooden, you know, had some wooden supports in it and stuff too. So I tinkered around with some different concepts and spent too much money on some of it, you know, to the trial and error piece of it. But now I got real happy with the 18-footer we have. And then I did go buy from a guy in Minnesota. I bought our 16-foot training ring. Nice. And then we kind of just dressed it up and made it our own. But you know, for years we ran with steel cables and made the switch back in 2012 to the real rope. You know, I really love the look of that. You know, I think it looks more like what you're seeing on TV now.
Yeah, totally. Dude, it's been great sitting down talking with you.
Hey, I got to say, Pete, though, thank you very much for your role in all of this. I mean, putting a podcast together and for however many people listen to it and get this far with us. I mean, I appreciate the listeners and appreciate the forum at which you've provided us to talk a little bit about and rant and do the little vanity project of getting to talk about it, too. So thank you very much for bringing awareness to everyone for what we do. So I know a lot of the guys in the community very much appreciate your role in everything, the Twitter and everything that you've done to help us.
Well, hey man, it's the least I can do for all the entertainment you've provided me. So stick tight after this. I'm gonna talk to you after I cut the recording short here. But hey everybody, this is Travis Shillington. Had a great time with you. Thanks, man.
Yep, thank you.
Another episode, another week. Hey, I hope everybody's doing good out there. I did a bonus episode last week. I don't really have a whole lot to talk about on my own, so I'm going to try and keep those to a very, very, very bare minimum. And in the meantime, I'm going to be Skyping people because that's going to be the best and easiest way that this is all going to work out for everybody at the current moment. So I hope you guys are enjoying the Skype podcast. I'm not doing too much editing on them. I'm not clipping out the parts where I'm like, oh, hey, what'd you say? I probably should because that's more professional. But you know what? This is what we're going with. It's just a nice conversation between two people talking about things, and I really enjoyed all the time I got to spend with Travis. You know, this was the most time I got to spend with him one-on-one, talking with him about how he got started in wrestling, his training, being on an episode of Raw. That's crazy, you know, getting beat up, just all the cool stuff that he has done in his life. It's really neat to hear all that stuff. So, I mean, as far as from the bottom up, and then as he was established, starts training people from the top down, you know, and it's just really kind of cool to see that, you know, and like I said in the intro, it's a very positive area over there, and like I said, it starts top down from the people who own and help run the place and the people who are involved. So hats off to Travis, and hey, even hats off to Troy. Go check that episode out too. If you guys didn't listen to that one and you're listening to this one, Travis and Troy put on a great promotion called Impact Pro Wrestling, and to anybody that listened to this that's not a pro wrestling fan, kudos. I really appreciate it. You guys are branching out, enjoying some new things. Dude, it's tons of fun. Go to a pro wrestling show if you've never been to one. I guarantee you'll get into it. I guarantee it. I do want to say, make sure you check out IPW Online. I got links down below. They're on Facebook. They're pretty much everywhere. So check them out, and make sure you also go, if you're looking to be a pro wrestler or you have any interest in it at all or want to go check it out, go to the Vault, Impact Pro Wrestling Training Facility. It is at IPW Vault on Facebook. I got links to all that down below, so check it out. If anybody's interested in wrestling, I would highly recommend checking out Impact Pro Wrestling. They got a fun program there, a great group of people. It's always entertaining, tons of fun. I'm glad I actually got to sit down with these guys one-on-one and talk with them about what they're doing and how they promote shows and their thought process that goes into all this stuff and what made them into the people they are today that put on, you know, pro wrestling shows. You can tell they have a lot of desire to do exactly that. So if you guys have any interest in checking out a pro wrestling show, check out Impact Pro Wrestling. All of their shows are on their Facebook page. Check that out. And make sure you keep an eye out for that Hall of Fame show. They do it once a year. It's in Waterloo. It has tons of famous people from past and present. Names, I guarantee you'll know someone if you watched any form of pro wrestling at any time in your life. I guarantee you'll know somebody there. That's how many people are there. They're all famous. It's cool. If you listen to this episode and you're like, oh, you didn't mention the Hall of Fame show too much, go back and listen to that episode with Troy that I did previously. That's a great one. We talk about the Hall of Fame show there. Otherwise, go to Impact Pro Wrestling and keep an eye out for that Hall of Fame show coming up. And it's going to be this summer. There's one every year. Like I said, it's an annual show, and they're tons of fun. You can't miss them. You're never going to get to meet that many wrestlers or be that close to as many famous people that were on TV probably ever anywhere in Iowa ever. So check it out. It's kind of like Comic-Con for Iowa and wrestling, but it's actually pretty cool. So if you like pro wrestling, it's totally worth it. And hey, if you're interested in pro wrestling, go see an indie show sometime. Be it Impact Pro Wrestling or whatever you have nearest you, go check it out. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Impact Pro Wrestling runs shows in northern Iowa and in Des Moines, as well as all across the counties of Iowa in the summertime. So check them out. They're tons of fun. And hey, to everybody that listened to this whole episode, it's another 2-hour long episode. You're welcome. I'm sorry. Thanks. I don't know what everybody's days consist of these days. It's been pretty wild, so I hope everybody's staying mentally well and positive, like Travis mentioned many times in this episode. It's all about being positive, so stay positive out there, everybody. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate everything you're doing. I'll check you guys next week. Peace.